It is chapter 9 of The Sword and the Rose. Midsummer Feast had come. The eternal struggle was going on between children with their eyes on the sweets being sold and mothers with their minds on nutrition and family finances. The day had started cool and mizzling, but by mid-morning the sun was shining and the fair was going to be a success, barring an afternoon thunderstorm, of course. The day had started cool. Whoops. Haywin Mar Irrelevant did her best to stay by Gwalsor's side throughout everything. As the Baron, he was expected to be seen by the festivities, during the festivities. He was constantly followed by his Sloveta companion, who always seemed to be waiting for something to happen. Gwalsor allowed Jadel the day off. Most of the day would be spent walking and standing, and Jadel, though he tried, was not up to being on his feet for long. He doubted, though, that Jadel would spend the whole day resting in his quarters. After all, he was a boy after all, and it was a midsummer feast. The people were still somewhat stiff when the Baron came by, extremely polite and courteous so that no fault could be found, but by noon it was beginning to wear on him. Forsyth, who had made it his business to mix with the crowd and to watch the Baron, saw the lines on his face begin to deepen. There were quarterstaff bouts, single-stick bouts, wrestling, dart throwing, archery, weight tossing, and many other contests. There were even crossbow matches. The Baron made at least a short appearance at each, and even the crossbow matches. Forsyth watched Gwalsor steel himself to watch these latter, and hoped that not too many others noted the tight grasp of the Baron's right hand on the leather sleeve covering his wrist. The Marshal saw Melgathop step up and whisper in the Baron's ear, and young Gwalsor relaxed almost visibly. Forsyth himself looked over the crowd to see who might be watching. There was the Irrelevant girl, of course. She'd done everything but tie herself to the Baron's arm, and likely as not, she would report all of what she saw to her brother. All she saw to her brother. It don't matter much who saw in this crowd, he realized. It needs only someone gossiping in the wrong place about how the Baron looked at the crossbow butts. He shook his head. Have to set someone to looking at who to be more mindful of the Baron's welfare than most. Saldra's tears. Be I now having to pull every peasant who says an unguarded word and put him to the question? I always hated that when I've seen it done, and now I'm on the other side. What did you get yourself into now, Forsyth Handolaf? Evening came on, and tables were set for the feast. Orders of the precedence separated Haywin Mar Irrelevant from the Baron, but whatever she thought, she did not let it trouble her outwardly. Just before everyone sat down to eat, a herald announced that the generosity of the king had contributed to the feast, both in meat and drink. Everyone ate and drank, though not too much, for the midsummer dance was still to come. After everyone had had something to eat and drink, the castle musicians came out and began to play the dance softly. The herald rose and called out, "Choose the leader of the dance!" By long-standing tradition, the common people have always chosen the leaders of the dance, a man and a woman. When the feast was being held at a baronial castle, it was practically unheard of for the people not to choose a baron. It was therefore no surprise to anyone that the herald listened, then said, "The people call Lord Randolph to lead the midsummer dance." If the Baron were married, it was again almost certain that his wife would be called to partner for him. In case such as this, where the Baron was unmarried, the people could and did call for whomever they wished. Often as not, they used it as an opportunity for a joke. After listening carefully, the herald said, "The people call Lady Brynwyn Mar Pathin." Brynwyn frowned, then composed her features and rose, going forth to stand beside Gwalsor. The Baron took her hand and bowed and said, "I count myself fortunate, lady. The people will have their little jokes when they can. They know I don't care for you." But being on public display, she smiled as she spoke. "Ah, in that case, I count myself unfortunate." She snorted. "Such courtly words from such a great hero." He blushed. "Lady, there are times when one can act of heroism that has cost me more than I care to think of, and I do not count that lump of flesh that once sat on the end of my wrist either." But there was not time left for talking, as the music had begun to play louder and more insistently, and it was time for them to begin to dance. The festivities went on and on. The first dance, by tradition, was a long one, but it ended when the Baron and Lady Bruton went back to their seats. Out of courtesy, Gaulesois had to dance with most of the noble ladies present. It was very late when he made his way to bed, escaping the blandishments of various ladies, including Héwyn Marherelevant. Héwyn watched him go, with a mild look of disappointment on her face. Only someone watching more carefully would notice her right hand crushing the fabric of her dress, then letting go. "My Lord Baron," said Melgathop, as they walked back through the castle corridors, "you need not go to cold and lonesome bed tonight. I have at least 4 willing to warm you and busy night. Give you a warm and busy night. Oh yes, there are 3 sorts, and the ones who wonder what it's like making love to a man with one hand, the ones who wonder what it's like making love to a baron, and the ones who see themselves as the future Lady Baroness. I think you may be a little hard to please, my lord." "I think I have to be just now. Think on it. Some dear young thing discovers I have no intention of making her my Lady Baroness, and suddenly I'm faced by angry brothers, fathers, uncles, cousins, or nephews by marriage perhaps, all of them at once." White teeth flashed in the olive face. "And maybe you are a little disappointed the lady not offer herself?" There was barely a perceptible catch in Gaulesoir's gait. Then he moved on. "Perhaps the Baron's wild Lafetta is making up tales to amuse himself." "Ah, there is someone? Maybe Baron's wild Lafetta misunderstands his lord's desires. Kidnap her for him by mistake?" "No, leave her!" A moment later the Baron spoke more calmly. "My apologies, Melga. Perhaps I am a bit overtired tonight. Maybe Lord Baron's wild Lafetta ought to know when not to bait the master. And here we are, safe and sound at your chamber." Melgalfet opened the door, stepped in, and sniffed. "Still safe, my lord." "You think someone might try to curse me again, Melga?" "Enough possibilities so I don't want to take any chances. Do you want to send a page sent up here to help you undress?" Gaulesoir shook his head. "No, don't bother him. I can manage myself for tonight. Good night, Melga." "Good night, my lord." For a moment Melgathop stood looking at the closed door with an expressionless face. Then he turned and walked away. The day after the midsummer feast, most people slept in as far as their duties would allow. The Baron, though he was by no means the last one up, was not up and about as his usual hour. Afternoon found him discussing tools with Edecda, in particular tools which could permit handicapped persons to do tasks normally required a sound body. In the course of this discussion, they walked through the castle and even down into the town. All this was to the disgust of the Baron's guard, who would have much preferred to have been on horseback for such an excursion. Gaulesoir, deeply engrossed in what the gnome was saying, was not aware of the noise until he suddenly realized that Edecda had stopped talking. He looked over and saw that Edecda had a look of fear on his face. "What is it?" "The sound, my Lord Baron. It's the sound of a hunting mob." "Well, they won't be hunting you, at any rate." "Who might they be hunting, Lord?" "We'll see." He began to stride in the direction of the noise, followed by his guard, with disapproving looks on their faces. They could protect the Baron. They could protect him easier if he didn't walk toward obvious trouble. They found the source of the noise very shortly. The young healer who had dealt with Jadal's injury, was fleeing from a mob chasing him with sticks and stones. The mob was urged on by a priest in red robes, who shouted and waved them forward, pointing at the healer. The healer had taken several blows already, and a gash over one eye was bleeding freely. Gwalsor turned to his guards. "Stop this business!" The chief of the guard party directed 2 of the 4 hand signals to guide with the mob. The priest paused and turned to slip away down an alley. Gwalsor turned to the guards and pointing back at the priest, ordered, "Get that fellow!" He wished Melga were with them. He'd probably have that priest under control already. But Melga had some other things to do with this afternoon and couldn't be there. "My Lord Baron, it's too risky to send off your guard." "I believe I will be safe enough while one of you fetches a priest for me. Now do it." The chief of the guard party looked at the Baron, then looked at the remaining guard and nodded. The man was off at a run. Gwalsor stood by watchfully while the 2 guards dealt with the mob. It was possible that the mob scene intended to create enough confusion for an attack on him, though he did not believe that. That would require having everything ready to be set in motion when the Baron walked into the town, which is something that could hardly be predicted. The mob was broken up easily enough, without the priest urging them on. Most of the people ran off when they saw armed men wearing the Baron's colors. Even the ones who were too worked up to pay attention to the presence of the guards were brought to their senses by a rap or 2 with the butt of a halberd. Suddenly there was a widening of clear space, centered around the healer, 2 guards and 3 others moaning on the ground with broken heads. Gwalsor, to the relief of the chief of the guard party, walked over to the healer, who stood behind the other 2 guards, dabbing his head with the sleeve of his robe. The healer eyed the Baron as he approached. "My thanks for the rescue, my Lord Baron." Something in the tone of his voice suggested that he disliked being beholden to the Baron. "Your name?" "Saldar Healer, my lord." By long traditions, healers left their names and families behind when they became healers. "And how have you offended these people, Saldar Healer?" "It was not so much these people, my Lord Baron, but that priest." "So what had he against you?" "I used a stone of ascertainment, my lord. The priest is one of those who call that divination, and trespassing on the rights of the gods." "I'd got as much. Do you know his name?" Saldar shook his head. "No, he's new to the town." "Ah, here he comes now." Gwalsor looked over to where the guardsmen were escorting the priest back, holding a firm grip on his upper arm. The priest was a slender, harsh-featured man, but apparently not in the best physical condition. He was puffing while the guard, even bearing weapons and brigadier and helm, were only breathing a little hard. "I rode him down, lord," the guard said with a smile. "He be a fierce one, but he ben't being able to keep up a pace." "Well done." Gwalsor dug in his wallet, pulled out a silver coin, and tossed it to the man, who left his halberd leaning on his shoulder, caught the coin, tucked it into his sash, and took up the halberd again, all without releasing the prisoner. Gwalsor turned his eye to the priest. "Your name?" The man lifted up his chin. "I am Veritor Hen Orland, my Lord Baron." "And what was it you were about here, Veritor Hen Orland?" "My Lord Baron, we were punishing this fellow for taking the prerogative of the gods upon himself." The priest spoke with hardly a trace of the common accent in his voice. "I see. And just how is he supposed to have done so?" He knew what the answer would be, but had to hear it from the man's own lips. "He uses one of those accursed stones, my Lord Baron. It is a form of divination, of discovering those things which the gods have hidden. And yet he uses a stone in the process of his healing work. Surely the gods do not object to such works of mercy." But the priest was not willing to give even a thumb length. "My Lord Baron, it is not for men to know all the wishes and purposes of the gods. It is only for us to live our lives without attempting to be as the gods are." "You argue in circles, fellow. We are not to attempt to know all the wishes and purposes of the gods, yet you claim to know at least one of them, that men ought to not use stones of ascertainment. But let us leave that aside. What justification do you for having causing a riot? My Lord Baron, we need no justification from any to punish apostates. No, perhaps not. But you need great justification to harm people of this barony or to cause damage to property. Take him away and have him locked up for judgment. You have no right to judge me. I'm the servant of the gods. And I am a servant of the king, responsible for keeping order in this part of his domain. Take him away. The two guards took an arm each and hustled the priest away. The chief of the guards looked at Gwalsor. The baron smiled. Yes, we'll go back to the castle ourselves. We don't wish to risk my noble skin too badly, do we? He knew, though, that it was not his skin they worried about, but what would happen to them if he were harmed. A flogging was most likely. Even hanging was not out of the question. He turned to the healer. Do you wish to accompany us to the castle, fellow? It might be safer. The healer shook his head. Without someone to stir them up and urge them on, the people are mostly harmless. Okay, that was a shorter one for today, I suppose. And also an odd place to leave off. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But, thank you for tuning in. Have a good night.